Hello everyone, my name is Luke. Once I found an abandoned lab of my late grandfather, and this is what came of it. But first, I must introduce my family. Mom and Dad are the Teterans of the blogging world. The peak of their popularity has long passed, but they have a small and permanent audience. Their work for them is their life. But lately, there were fewer and fewer ads and clients. They dreamed of changing that by launching a new travel channel. They constantly taught me that the future belonged to bloggers. They would replace TV, news, everyone would listen to them. Therefore, I was sent to courses on how to present myself, public speaking and other necessary things to impress the public. And I didn't want to bother myself with this because physics, chemistry, and other sciences were much more fascinating and hid secrets and new opportunities. My parents simply did not digest science. Grandpa died because of an explosion of one of his new prototypes. And when I also blew up a homemade firecracker in our backyard, they got scared and then forbade me to do anything else like that. Stephen Hawking, an outstanding theoretical scientist, became great without any experiments, they said. If you will have your crazy experiments, you'll end up just like your crazy grandfather. And now I present to you Evelyn, the beauty of our class, a popular Instagram blogger and, my first and unrequited love. Blogging takes a lot of time and effort, so I helped her with her studies. And then there is Jared and Bob, my friends. They do taekwondo. I also help them with school, and they do not let any bullies near me. When I was watching my favorite TV show, The Big Bang Theory, the terrible news came. My grandma had died. My parents didn't get along with her and thought she was crazy. So I only saw her 2 or 3 times in my entire life. After all the funeral ceremonies were over, my parents went to settle legal issues with the inheritance. And I was sent to sort things out in her house. The house was very old and it smelled so musty inside that I could not breathe. And I quickly ran to the backyard to get some fresh air. There was a garden in the backyard. Grandma abandoned it long ago, and it was completely overgrown with grass, which was high up to my waist. At the end of the yard was a hill, all overgrown with wild grapes. Suddenly, the wind blew, and through the foliage, I saw some kind of metallic sheen. Coming closer, I parted the leaves and saw a door with a massive metal handle. I went inside, turned on the light, and was stunned. The room was filled with various technical equipment. There was grinding and polishing machines, liquid crystal thermometers, stencil printers for lithography, and much, much more. Everything was new and ready to use. I did not know many machines and devices, but when I started looking for info on the internet, I realized that I now had everything to create devices, make measurements, and conduct experiments. The telephone rang at dinner. Dad talked to someone and came back very happy. He happily announced that people were ready to buy the house from us at a very favorable price in the near future. And finally, they would be able to buy a house on wheels to launch a series of posts about travel. "No!" I shouted. Everyone looked at me in surprise. I totally forgot to say the house is full of cockroaches and huge rats. You can't sell a house like that. You first need to get rid of them. An acquaintance of mine does that," I blurted out. My parents looked at each other and said that they were expecting me to take the matter into my hands. It was scary to think what they would do if they found out about Grandpa's lab. I bought time, but until I figured out where to transport the equipment and my hands were itching to start creating something, I decided to begin immediately. I have long dreamed of creating a new modern fall protection for phones. I told my parents that the house was full of pests and that no one could be in it for another month, and set to work myself. I disappeared there for days and nights, forgetting to study, sleep, and eat. After 10 prototypes and hundreds of experiments, I finally had a working prototype. It was a rather large bumper covering the ends of the smartphone. It was connected to it via USB and through the built-in gyroscope monitored the position in space. And as soon as it detected that the phone was falling, it inflated airbags like an inflatable boat in a split second. No height was scary to it, and at the same time, it would also never drown. The time for drowning phones is over. This is how I saw the headlines in my thoughts. I already gave interviews, but I pulled myself out of pleasant daydreams and thought how to declare my invention to the world. Evelyn called me and asked for help with physics. At first I tried to refuse and say that I had a lot of work to do. But she persistently and gently asked me again, and as usual, I gave up and went to her house to help. Her parents were often not at home. I sat down at the desk, began typing the term paper on her lap. She warned that she needed to get ready for a date, and that I do not turn around while she's changing outfits. I quickly wrote in the beginning of the paper. The rest of the text was generated by a program that I specifically wrote for such classes. And in half an hour, everything was ready. Evelyn was just drying her hair. "I see that you're tense. What happened?" she asked. I told her everything about the lab, about my new invention. Evelyn's eyes lit up and asked to show her everything. I proudly took her to the lab and gave her a short tour, since she was immediately interested in my safety phone case. She had her latest iPhone and immediately decided to test the case, putting it on her smartphone. She threw it to the floor. As luck would have it, at that moment the case did not work and the smartphone hit the sharp corner of the table leg with its screen. The screen, despite the protective glass, was all in cracks. I've never seen Evelyn's eyes and mouth get so big. And then she exploded. "You dumb moron!" she shouted. "You don't know how to do it!" Shouting, she left, loudly slamming the door behind her. I immediately checked the case and it worked great. Strange, this was probably karma. I had no time to get upset, and I decided to take a chance and give a couple of prototypes of this case to my parents so that they can review it. I said that this was one of the latest developments of some mysterious Chinese genius. They were somewhat skeptical about this case, but agreed to test it and film a review. Several days passed before the video appeared, and all I saw was just negativity. Dad said how uncomfortable it was, too fat and could hardly fit into his pocket. And my mother said how not aesthetically pleasing it was and that it was completely inappropriate for an elegant girl. In conclusion, they decided unanimously that you shouldn't even think about buying this case, since every time after a fall it needed to be changed, and in general it would not even be useful to you, unless of course you are not an awkward person. This particularly hurt me. I slammed my laptop angrily. So a clumsy invented something for other clumsies. Well, that was it. It would destroy the lab, and we would sell the house as the parents wanted. I was on my way to the lab when a call came from an unknown number. I picked up the phone. It was Evelyn. She apologized for her behavior, but the phone was very important to her. She got a good grade, and the teacher proudly gave her a new, even more complex problem, and she needed my help. I said that when I was done with my business, I would help her. When I finished talking, Jared and Bob jumped out of the bushes. "And we were looking for you, buddy. You've been ignoring our calls and messages lately, and we really need help in chemistry," said Jared, and Bob added. "And we wondered what you were doing that was so important. What is more important than friends?" And he put his heavy hand on my shoulder that I even lowered. "I'll show you. Come after me." I took them to my lab. Yes, they were very impressed. They wandered around the place and occasionally laughed when they saw some weird and interesting thing. "Oh, it looks like an adult toy," and laughed loudly. When they calmed down a bit, Jared remembered seeing how, in one movie, they invented glasses that could show through objects. The villains took advantage of this to break into a safe with money. "It's that simple," I thought. "Infrared radiation at certain frequencies can shine through synthetic objects, and by adjusting the amplitude and wavelength range, you can adjust the transmission depth." "You can do that?" Bob's words pulled me out of my reverie. "Yes, but you need to buy something for that." "Cool!" both exclaimed. "This will be our startup, and we will be your first investors." I agreed. A few days later, I received a fairly impressive amount, exact to every penny, as requested. I didn't think that they had that kind of money, and to be honest, I hoped that they would lag behind. I was in a weird mood. I didn't want to invent anything. Anyway, it would be easy. Having brought everything that I needed, I assembled the device in just a few days. A working prototype was already ready, which perfectly shone through the remotes, TV, and other plastic devices. In the evening, my investors came to check out the device, and of course they began to look at each other and laugh. "You have panties with hearts, haha, and you have holes? Probably farted your way through them, haha." Then they turned their attention to me. "Haha, SpongeBob!" They burst out laughing. I was confused. Interesting. They continued to talk. What panties does Evelyn have? Only then did I understand how they were going to apply this invention, and their whole business plan immediately became clear. I said that the device still needs to be improved a little, but they said that the device works fine, and so far, nothing needed to be changed. I panicked and said that they would not get anything. They replied that they had invested a lot of money on it and owned it completely. They took the device with them. There was an urgent need to save the reputation of Evelyn and many other innocent girls. While Mom was recording a new video, I pulled out black stockings from her dresser. Before breaking into Jared's house, I put them on my head. I made my way into the courtyard and climbed the tree whose branches led directly into Jared's bedroom window. With a diamond cutter and a suction cup, I cut out a piece of the glass and opened the window latch. Jared was fast asleep, but I let him breathe chloroform to keep him asleep. Now I could safely search in the room. I turned it all upside down, but the device was nowhere to be found. Then Jared snored loudly, rolled over, put his hand under the pillow, as if checking something there. I reached under the pillow and felt my device. Pulling it out, I quickly ran to the lab. I destroyed the device, all the diagrams and drawings about it. The next day, when the loss was discovered, my investors came. They were clearly outraged. I immediately got punched. Having searched everything and realized that there was nothing, they began to threaten and question me. I honestly said that I had destroyed everything, but they did not believe me and continued to threaten and interrogate me. In a rage, they smashed everything in the lab, and they beat me unconscious. I woke up in the hospital. The police came. It turns out that Jared and Bob borrowed money from their elderly neighbor, which he kept under the mattress, hoping that he would soon not discover the loss. But the old man's close relatives ended up in the hospital, and he decided to open his piggy bank. Naturally, he immediately reported to the police. They quickly found the guys, but they claim it was me who was the main instigator. My parents are terribly angry at me for hiding my find. I'm depressed. I can't figure out how to handle all this. Leave helpful tips in the comments, and thank you for your attention.